The morning started like any other Tuesday in Denver. I was rushing to get my coffee order right at the drive-thru when my phone buzzed with a text from my husband, Michael. Running late for lunch today. Something came up at the office. I rolled my eyes. Typical Michael, always putting work first. If I had known that would be our last normal conversation, I would have said something different than just okay. The intersection of Colfax and Federal was busy as usual. I was listening to my favorite podcast, something about true crime that always made my commute more interesting. The light turned green. I pressed the gas, and then nothing. Just the sound of metal crushing metal, and my world turning upside down. I woke up 3 days later in Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital. The room smelled like disinfectant and had that peculiar hospital quiet. Not silence, but a muffled kind of noise where everything seems distant and dreamlike. My head felt like it was wrapped in cotton, and when I tried to move my left arm, a sharp pain reminded me that this wasn't a dream. "Mrs. Anderson? You're awake." A nurse with kind eyes and graying hair approached my bed. "I'm Patricia. You've been unconscious for 3 days. You were in a car accident." The memories came flooding back slowly, like puzzle pieces falling into place. The green light, the sound of my podcast, then the impact that felt like the world exploding around me. "Is my husband here?" "Michael!" My voice came out as barely a whisper. Patricia's expression changed slightly, something I couldn't quite read. He's been here every day. Would you like me to call him?" Over the next few hours, doctors came and went. Dr. Rodriguez, a young resident with tired eyes, explained that I had suffered a severe concussion, 3 broken ribs, and a fractured left arm. "You're lucky to be alive," he said matter-of-factly. The other driver ran a red light, going 60 miles per hour. Michael arrived that evening, looking haggard and worn down. His usually perfectly styled brown hair was messy, and his clothes looked like he'd slept in them. When he saw me awake, his eyes filled with tears. "Thank God you're okay," he whispered, taking my good hand in both of his. "I thought I'd lost you." But something felt different. He seemed nervous, kept checking his phone, and wouldn't quite meet my eyes when I asked about the accident details. When I mentioned wanting to see the police report, he quickly changed the subject to how much he loved me and how scared he'd been. That night, after Michael left, Patricia came back to check on me. As she adjusted my 4, she said something that made my blood run cold. "Your husband is such a devoted man. It's not often we see someone spend so much time going between 2 rooms like that." "2 rooms?" I asked, confused. Patricia looked surprised, like she'd said something she shouldn't have. "Oh, I thought you knew. There was another woman in the accident. She's been here too." The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. "Another woman?" I really shouldn't have said anything. The doctor should explain. "What other woman?" My heart was racing now, and the monitors around me started beeping faster. Patricia looked uncomfortable but continued. "She was in your car. A woman named Jessica. She's been in room 314, just down the hall." The world tilted. Jessica was in my car. During the accident? The same Jessica that Michael had mentioned a few times as a new colleague at his architecture firm? The beeping from my heart monitor got louder, and Patricia quickly tried to calm me down. "Please, Mrs. Anderson, you need to stay calm. Let me get the doctor." But I was far from calm. As Patricia hurried out of the room, I stared at the ceiling, trying to process what I just learned. Why was Jessica in my car? Where were we going together? And why hadn't Michael mentioned any of this? The questions multiplied in my mind like a virus, each one more unsettling than the last. The peaceful morning I thought I remembered was starting to feel like a lie, and I had the sinking feeling that everything I thought I knew about my life was about to unravel. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of the accident mixed with images of Michael and this mysterious Jessica. When morning came, I was determined to get answers, starting with room 314. Dr. Martinez, the attending physician, arrived during morning rounds. She was a woman in her 40s with short black hair and a no-nonsense attitude that I immediately appreciated. "Mrs. Anderson, I understand you've learned about the other patient from your accident. I should have discussed this with you yesterday, but we wanted to ensure you were stable first." "Tell me everything," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Dr. Martinez pulled up a chair beside my bed. "Jessica Williams was in the passenger seat of your vehicle. She suffered more severe injuries, internal bleeding, multiple fractures. She's been in and out of consciousness, but she's stable now. Why was she in my car? I don't remember picking her up. Memory loss is common with head trauma. The police report indicates you were both traveling east on Colfax when the other driver ran the red light and hit your side of the car. My mind raced. Can I see the police report? Your husband has been handling all the paperwork. You should discuss it with him. After Dr. Martinez left, I convinced Patricia to help me into a wheelchair. I need to see her, I told her. I need to understand what happened. Patricia was reluctant but eventually agreed. Just for a few minutes. And if you feel dizzy or nauseous, we're coming right back. Room 314 was just down the hall, but the journey felt like miles. My hands were shaking as Patricia wheeled me through the doorway. Jessica was awake, staring out the window at the Denver skyline. She was younger than me, maybe late 20s, with long blonde hair spread across her pillow. When she turned to look at me, I saw her eyes were green and filled with something that looked like guilt. "You're awake," she said softly. "I wasn't sure. They said you were unconscious. Why were you in my car?" I asked directly. Jessica's face crumpled, and she started crying. "I'm so sorry. This is all my fault." "What's your fault?" "The accident." "No, not the accident. But everything else." She wiped her tears with a shaky hand. "I shouldn't have been there. We shouldn't have been meeting." A cold dread settled in my stomach. Meeting? For what? Jessica looked toward the door, as if checking to make sure no one was listening. "I've been seeing your husband for 6 months now. We were supposed to meet that morning to talk about telling you. About him leaving." The words hit me like another car accident. The room spun, and I gripped the wheelchair handles so hard my knuckles turned white. That can't be true." "I'm sorry," Jessica whispered. "I know how this sounds, but we were in love, or I thought we were. He kept saying he would leave, that he just needed more time to find the right way to tell you. I felt like I was drowning. So you were meeting that morning to plan how to destroy my marriage?" "No," Jessica said quickly. "I mean, yes, we were meeting, but I was going to tell him I couldn't do it anymore. The lying, the sneaking around, it was killing me. I was going to tell him it was over unless he told you the truth immediately." Patricia noticed my distress and started wheeling me back toward the door. "That's enough for today." But I needed more answers. "Wait, why were you in my car then?" "My car was in the shop. Michael was supposed to pick me up, but at the last minute, he said he couldn't something about a work emergency. So you offered to drive me instead." "I offered?" This made no sense. "You called me that morning. You said Michael had told you about me, about us. You wanted to meet face to face, to talk like adults. You said you weren't angry, just wanted to understand." The room was spinning now. "That's impossible. I would never." "You were so calm on the phone. You said you'd suspected for months, and that you just wanted closure. You picked me up at my apartment, and we were driving to that coffee shop on Colfax when I couldn't process any more. The woman I thought was my husband's colleague was his lover. The accident I thought was random was actually the result of me driving to confront my husband's mistress. And somehow, I had completely lost all memory of knowing about the affair. As Patricia wheeled me back to my room, my mind reeled with questions. If I had known about Michael and Jessica, why couldn't I remember? Was it just the head trauma, or was there something else? And if I had been driving to meet Jessica that morning, what had I been planning to do? The Michael who had been crying at my bedside, holding my hand and professing his love, was the same man who had been lying to me for 6 months. The morning I thought had started normally was actually the morning I had decided to confront the truth about my marriage. But the biggest question of all was this: if I couldn't remember discovering Michael's affair, what else couldn't I remember? Back in my room, I stared at the phone on my bedside table for what felt like hours. Should I call Michael immediately? Confront him about Jessica? Or should I wait and see what else I could discover first? I decided to start with what I could verify. When Patricia came back to check on me, I asked her to bring me my personal belongings from the night of the accident. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" she asked gently. "I need to know what happened to my life." My purse was in a plastic bag, labeled with my name and the date of the accident. My phone was cracked but functional. As I scrolled through my recent calls and texts, my hands trembling, I found evidence that Jessica was telling the truth. Text from me to Jessica at 7:23 a.m. that Tuesday. I'll pick you up at 8:30. We need to talk. Jessica's response. Are you sure about this? Maybe Michael should be there too. My reply. No. Just us first. I want to hear your side before I decide what to do. There were other texts too, going back several days. Me asking Jessica to meet. Jessica seeming reluctant. Me insisting that I deserve the truth, and that I wasn't going to cause a scene. But I had no memory of sending any of these messages. No memory of discovering the affair. No memory of the pain and betrayal that must have led to these conversations. I kept scrolling and found something even more disturbing. A text thread with my sister Amy in Portland from the week before the accident. Amy, have you decided what you're going to do about Michael? Me. I think I need to meet her first. See what kind of person would do this to another woman. Amy, are you sure that's a good idea? Maybe you should just confront Michael directly. Me. I've been thinking about this for weeks. I need to look her in the eye. I had confided in my sister. I had been planning this confrontation for weeks. How could I not remember any of this? When Michael arrived that evening, he looked better, more put together, less frantic. He brought flowers and my favorite takeout from the Thai restaurant we used to go to for our anniversaries. How are you feeling today? He asked, kissing my forehead. I watched his face carefully as I spoke. I met Jessica today. The color drained from Michael's face, and he nearly dropped the takeout containers. What do you mean you met her? She's in room 314. She told me about your relationship. Michael's mouth opened and closed like he was drowning. Finally, he sank into the chair beside my bed, his head in his hands. I didn't want you to find out like this. Not while you're hurt and vulnerable. When did you want me to find out? After you left me for her? It's not that simple. Michael looked up, and I could see tears in his eyes. I love you both. The casual cruelty of that statement took my breath away. You love us both. I never meant for this to happen. Jessica and I, we connected. But I never wanted to hurt you. I was trying to figure out how to handle it. By lying to me for 6 months. Michael was quiet for a long moment. How much do you remember about that morning? Nothing, I admitted. I remember getting coffee, getting your text about being late for lunch, and then the accident. But according to Jessica and my phone, I had discovered your affair and was driving to meet her. I have no memory of any of it. The doctors said memory loss was possible with your head injury. Something in his tone made me suspicious. What aren't you telling me? Michael stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. The night before the accident, we had a huge fight. You had found some texts on my phone while I was in the shower. You were furious. You threw things. You said you were going to confront Jessica, and I begged you not to. Fragments started coming back, flashes of anger, of feeling betrayed, of making a decision. But they were like trying to grab smoke. You begged me not to confront her. I was afraid of what you might do. You were so angry, angrier than I'd ever seen you. You said some things. He turned back to face me. You said you were going to make her pay for what she'd done to our marriage. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean, make her pay? I don't know. You wouldn't tell me what you were planning. You just kept saying that she needed to understand the consequences of her actions. I thought about Jessica in room 314, more badly injured than me, apologetic and guilt-ridden. I thought about the fact that I had been driving, that I had insisted on meeting her alone. Michael, are you saying you think I might have? I don't know what to think, he said quietly. The police said the other driver ran a red light. It was clearly his fault. But the timing, the fact that you were so angry, the fact that you insisted on driving Jessica. The implication hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. Was Michael suggesting that I had somehow caused the accident on purpose? That I had been planning to hurt Jessica? I would never hurt someone intentionally, I said, but even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. I couldn't remember my state of mind that morning. I couldn't remember what I had been planning to say to Jessica, or what I might have been willing to do. I know, Michael said quickly. I know you wouldn't, but you were just so angry, and now you can't remember any of it. As he left that night, promising to be back tomorrow, I was left with the most terrifying question of all. What if the accident wasn't really an accident? What if I had been so consumed with rage and betrayal that I had done something unthinkable? And what if the head trauma had made me forget not just the affair, but my own capacity for revenge? I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of something: anger, tears, the feeling of betrayal cutting through me like a knife. But the memories were fragmented, unreliable, like trying to remember a dream after waking up. The next morning, Dr. Martinez found me staring out the window at the busy Denver street below, watching cars navigate the same intersection where my life had fallen apart. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, pulling up her usual chair. "Like I'm losing my mind," I said honestly. "I can't remember huge pieces of my life, and what I am remembering doesn't make sense." Memory recovery after trauma can be unpredictable. Sometimes memories return all at once, sometimes in pieces, and sometimes they don't return at all. "What if I don't want them to return?" I asked. "What if what I can't remember is something terrible?" Dr. Martinez studied my face. "What makes you think you did something terrible?" I told her everything about discovering Michael's affair, about my angry confrontation with him the night before, about my plan to meet Jessica, about Michael's suggestion that maybe the accident wasn't entirely accidental. "Do you think it's possible," I asked, "that I could have deliberately caused an accident and then blocked it out?" Dr. Martinez was quiet for a long time. "I think you're being too hard on yourself. From what I've observed, you're dealing with a tremendous amount of trauma, both physical and emotional. Your reaction to discovering your husband's infidelity was probably very normal. But I can't remember. Maybe there's a reason you can't remember. Maybe your mind is protecting you from something." That afternoon, Amy arrived from Portland. I hadn't seen my sister since Christmas, but she looked exactly the same: long brown hair like mine, but with laugh lines around her eyes that mine lacked. She hugged me carefully, mindful of my injuries. "I got here as soon as I could," she said. "Michael called me yesterday and told me you'd regained consciousness." "Did he tell you about Jessica?" Amy's face darkened. "He told me about the affair, yes. He also told me about your memory loss." "Amy, I need you to tell me everything. What did I say to you about Michael and Jessica? What was I planning to do?" Amy sat on the edge of my hospital bed, taking my good hand in hers. "You called me about 3 weeks ago. You said you'd been suspicious for months. Michael staying late at work, being secretive with his phone, business trips that didn't quite add up. How did I find out for sure? You hired a private investigator. This was news to me." "I did what?" "His name was Tony Brennan. He followed Michael for 2 weeks and got photos of him and Jessica together. Hotel receipts, restaurant dates, the whole thing. I tried to process this. I had been methodical, investigative, planning. This wasn't the action of someone who had snapped in a moment of rage. What did I say I was going to do with the information? You wanted a divorce, but you also wanted to confront Jessica first. You said you needed to understand what kind of person would knowingly destroy a marriage. Did I seem dangerous? Angry enough to hurt someone?" Amy looked confused. "Dangerous? No. You seemed hurt, betrayed, but also determined to handle things the right way. You kept saying you wanted to take the high road. This didn't match what Michael had told me about my rage-filled confrontation with him. Amy, Michael said I had a huge fight with him the night before the accident. That I threw things and threatened to make Jessica pay. That doesn't sound like you at all," Amy said immediately. "Even when you're angry, you're not violent. And you specifically told me you didn't want to cause a scene or do anything you'd regret later." A new possibility began forming in my mind. "Amy, what if Michael is lying about that night? What if he's trying to make me think I was unstable, dangerous? Why would he do that? Because if everyone thinks I was in a rage-filled state, they might believe I caused the accident on purpose. It would take attention away from his affair and make me look like the villain." Amy's eyes widened. "You think he's manipulating you while you're vulnerable and can't remember?" Before I could answer, we were interrupted by a knock on the door. A man in his 50s with graying hair and a kind face appeared in the doorway. "Mrs. Anderson? I'm Detective Williams with Denver PD. I was hoping I could ask you a few questions about the accident." My heart started racing. "Am I in trouble?" "Not at all. We're just trying to get a complete picture of what happened. The other driver was clearly at fault. He ran a red light and was driving under the influence. But we need to understand why you and Miss Jessica Williams were together that morning." Detective Williams sat down and pulled out a small notepad. "Do you remember anything about your plans that day?" I'm having memory issues from the head trauma, I explained. I don't remember discovering my husband's affair or planning to meet Jessica. I see. Well, we spoke with Ms. Williams yesterday when she was feeling better. She provided some helpful information. What kind of information? According to her, you had contacted her several days before the accident. She said you were very professional, very calm. You told her you knew about the relationship with your husband and that you wanted to meet face-to-face to discuss the situation like adults. This matched what Jessica had told me and what I'd found in my text messages. She said you picked her up at her apartment that morning and were driving to meet at a coffee shop on Colfax. She described you as composed, maybe a little sad, but definitely not angry or erratic. Did she say what we were going to discuss at the coffee shop? She said you wanted to hear her side of the story, and that she was planning to tell you she had decided to end the relationship with your husband. Apparently, she'd been feeling guilty about the affair and wanted out. I looked at Amy, who was nodding as if this all made perfect sense. Detective, my husband told me that the night before the accident, we had a huge fight. He said I was violent and threatening, but I can't remember any of it. Detective Williams looked surprised. That's interesting. We spoke with your neighbors as part of our routine investigation. The Johnsons next door mentioned hearing raised voices from your house around 10 p.m. 2 nights before the accident, not the night before. And they said it sounded like your husband was the one yelling. 2 nights before, not the night before. Michael had lied about the timing, and possibly about everything else. Detective, is there any evidence that the accident was anything other than what it appears a drunk driver running a red light? None whatsoever. The other driver has been charged with vehicular assault. He's facing serious jail time. This was clearly his fault, Mrs. Anderson. You and Ms. Williams were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. After Detective Williams left, Amy and I sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she spoke. He's been lying to you. While you're hurt and vulnerable, he's been rewriting history to make you think you were unstable. I felt a mix of relief and fury. Relief that I wasn't a potential murderer who had blocked out her own violence. Fury that my husband had been manipulating me during the most vulnerable time of my life. Amy, I want you to call Tony Brennan, the private investigator. I want all the evidence he gathered about Michael's affair. What are you going to do? I'm going to remember who I really am, and then I'm going to decide what to do with my life. That evening, when Michael arrived with more flowers and more apologies, I was ready for him. I spoke with Detective Williams today, I said calmly. Michael's face went pale. Oh, he told me some interesting things. Like the fact that our fight was 2 nights before the accident, not 1. Like the fact that the neighbors heard you yelling, not me. Michael sat down heavily in his chair. Look, the exact timing doesn't matter. It matters because you've been lying to me. You've been trying to convince me that I was violent and unstable so that I'd feel guilty about an accident that wasn't my fault. That's not. I also spoke with my sister. She reminded me that I hired a private investigator to document your affair. That I was planning to handle the divorce professionally. That I specifically told her I wanted to take the high road. Michael's shoulders sagged. I was scared, he said quietly. Scared of what? Scared you'd leave me. Scared you'd take everything in the divorce. When you lost your memory, I thought maybe I could. Maybe we could start over. By lying to me about who I am. I love you, he said, but it sounded hollow now. No, you don't. You love the idea of having both me and Jessica. You love not having to face consequences for your choices. I looked at this man I'd been married to for 8 years. This man who had been willing to gaslight me while I was recovering from a traumatic accident, and I felt nothing but pity. I want you to leave, I said. And tomorrow, Amy is going to help me call my lawyer. Michael stood up slowly. At the door, he turned back. What about us? What about our marriage? Our marriage ended 6 months ago when you started sleeping with Jessica. I just didn't know it yet. After he left, I felt something I hadn't experienced since waking up in the hospital, peace. My memory might still be fragmented, but I knew who I was now. I was someone who faced problems head-on, someone who sought truth even when it was painful, someone who refused to be manipulated or gaslit. The accident had been random, tragic, life-altering, but it hadn't changed the fundamental truth. I deserved better than a man who would lie to his injured wife. I deserved a chance to rebuild my life with honesty and integrity. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I realized that sometimes losing your memory can be a gift. It forces you to rediscover who you really are, stripped of all the stories other people tell you about yourself. And who I really was. I was someone strong enough to handle the truth, whatever it might be.